Good afternoon, good morning. This is Mark Johnson from Loyalty360. Welcome you to another Loyalty360 Thought Leadership in Loyalty series. In this series, we have the pleasure of speaking to the leaders in customer channel and brand loyalty about the technology that impacts brands' ability to drive unique experience and engagement. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Christian Selchau-Hansen, who is the CEO and co-founder of Formation. Christian, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Perfect. Can you tell us a little bit about Formation, what you do, how you do it, what industries you play in?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are an enterprise software company. We're headquartered in the San Francisco area. And with our solution, we help our customers by building and strengthening their customer relationships by automating the deployment of individualized offers across digital and physical channels. And so typically our focus is with companies who have kind of known customer base, whether that's explicitly as part of a loyalty program, or whether they simply have done a good job of matching up their data for their current customers, and then helping them connect those customers to content and offers that matter, and ultimately driving an increase in lifetime value.
Okay, great. Can you tell us a little bit about your role within the organization?
Sure. So I'm one of the co-founders. I'm also a former partner at BCG Digital Ventures, and then have lived and worked in the Bay Area for about 15 years, and have a background kind of in a variety of different software startups, including places like Zynga and Square. And so we started Formation about 4 years ago, and really wanted to leverage advances in AI, machine learning, and automation to help big companies connect with their customers at an individual level.
Christian, can you talk to us about an instance where a brand, a retailer, a airline, a CPG company may be leveraging your technology in some unique ways they're leveraging it and seeing the results?
Absolutely. Yeah, so one of our customers is a major US airline, and we help them power individualized offers for all the members of their loyalty program. And so it ranges across millions of people in the program, and is available at kind of all of the various touch points, whether it's web, mobile, email, customer contact center. And what these offers do is they really help connect all the customers, whether they're highly engaged, moderately engaged, or very lightly engaged, to different products and services that they can engage with as part of a loyalty program, beyond just flying. So it could be flying, could be credit cards, could be relationships they have with various partners, including hotels, rental cars, shopping, dining, and all the different ways that the airlines have connected their loyalty program to different things you can do.
Excellent. The next question, obviously it's a kind of a very challenging and unique time. Why do brands need to focus their attention on loyalty strategies more in general, but also would love to hear from you, why should brands be focusing more on the loyalty strategies now in the midst of this kind of era of uncertainty?
Yeah, in really just an instant, it felt like we all have changed the way that we live, we work, and we shop, in response to COVID. And, these changes have created a high level of uncertainty, not just for consumers, but also for businesses, and really even more for how businesses can best connect with their customers. If we think traditionally about what loyalty has meant, your best customers are going to be responsible for about 80% of your future profits. And really what that means is, in this time of uncertainty, these are the customers you should be doubling down on. You should look to deeply understand how their behavior is changing and what they need from you, and recognize that has changed as well. And when you can adapt your approaches, your strategies, your tactics, and your communications to those changing customer needs, that's going to ultimately build a much stronger relationship. And that's, I think, particularly important in today's environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the way that we are tending to think about it is really to break it down into three different steps.
Okay.
One is to recognize that you have to update your understanding of the customer. And what I would say is you focus on not just near-term needs, but the midterm. And thinking of what it means by near-term. If you are shopping, for example, and you're working, and we work with grocery as one of the verticals, across retail and travel hospitality, as well as restaurant. In a grocery setting, it's clearly become an even higher level of need. People are going to the store more than ever because their alternatives, going to restaurants, for example, is something that you no longer can do. And it's as you move into kind of that phase of where you're also, as a consumer, very concerned about your own health. And as a business, you're concerned about the health of your consumers as well as your employees. You need to recognize that the needs have changed. And so, in talking with, a grocery leader, it's not about price and selection right now as much as it is about, am I safe going into the store? And are you going to have some of the essentials that I need for myself or my family? And that becomes the overriding concern. And again, it's recognizing that shift in need and focusing on how do you help fill that initial need or that near-term need in a time of crisis. And when I say midterm, what that means is, we are undergoing these rapid changes in behavior. And it's important to recognize those, but also make sure that you're creating a good path for the medium term, that you're not creating unsustainable behaviors or ones that could be detrimental longer term to the customer experience and to your relationship.
Excellent. And I know I have another follow-up question to that. Do you think the changes that we've seen, and this has been a big topic we've had with a lot of our marketers, we have these small-sided meetings, we get to talk about the challenges they have. Do you think, in data, right, the trust of the brand, and a lot of organizations are talking about this, is how do I get through this with empathy and trust, and almost in that midterm perspective, right, forsaking some revenue opportunities. You can't keep, beating people over the head to buy things right now, especially, one of the things that we know that people, they look for solve problems for internal solutions. Most people build products that address external solutions. People don't necessarily want milk per se. You talk about grocery, right? They want milk. They're looking for the safety of their family, right? They have that highly emotive connection. In the short-term data, are brands going to be focusing more on, that zero-party data, trying to engage with a shorter and smaller group? Because what you guys do, and obviously I know and read a number of your case studies, you guys do some amazing work and you're driving significant behavior. But I think there's going to be a challenge potentially coming out of this, that the trust factor may or may not change depending on how the brand's navigated, to your point, short-term, situation we're in. Hopefully it's short-term.
It couldn't agree more. Yes, like in any time of rapid change, you can strengthen the relationship by being kind of on point, understanding those customer needs, or you can whiff. And I think as consumers, we're seeing those cases of both. We're seeing kind of pre-programmed marketing communications continue to go out the door saying, hey, it's springtime, like buy a bunch of stuff. That's not relevant, and if anything, resonates really off tune to today's consumer. Whereas I think, I agree with your point. If you're concerned about getting milk for your family, one of the other things that is important from that grocery point of view is not to allow you to go in and buy out all the milk. Recognize that putting in place some recommendations and some education for the consumer, saying, look, we're going to continue getting supply. You don't need to worry about oversupply. That's also really important. So, generally the way that, again, we're talking with our customers is to think of it a little bit in three phases. The first phase is we need to support our communities. We need to support the employees. We need to support our customers, educating them on how these changes and how they can continue to be safe, like what we're doing and the actions we're taking as a business. And then the second is, as we move into ideally kind of the areas where the curve is not just flattened but declining, where we're seeing the beginning of a recovery or the potential for it, to again educate on what does this mean? Like, how should we be safe coming out of the recovery? How should we be safe kind of moving into the next phase? And then the third phase that we're seeing, and again, is like, how do you start bringing back some of those and enabling some of the behaviors that we know people will want to engage in, but they may not be sure about how. And that's really kind of where you have, as a business, an opportunity to bring your customers back, to rebuild kind of your market share, and if you do it really well, to capture new share and be able to serve populations in ways that you hadn't been able to do before.
That's awesome. I like that. That's very cogent and comprehensive. So that's yeah, that was great to hear. The next question that we have and we like to ask are, what are some of the effective elements of a successful loyalty program?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question too. I think loyalty programs need to actually change quite a bit. I think if you can act in a way that is coherent and personal to a consumer throughout all the stages of their customer journey, that's a way to build true loyalty, to understand what their needs are and to make it possible for them to achieve their need, and to do it with less friction than they ever could before. That will keep people coming back. What it requires is a very high bar for relevance. And that's where I think today's loyalty programs have generally put in place one of the foundational building blocks for that, which is understanding your customer. And that starts with your data infrastructure. Can you match up, for example, your transactions by customer? Understand, what are they doing? How are they engaging? What products are they purchasing? Having that granularity of understanding, that's really important. The next thing is, though, what do you do with that granularity of understanding? And that's where we see some of the biggest challenges and most opportunity for companies today. Because, I'm sure, Mark, when you've talked with various leaders, once you have your data, then you start developing insights. And you say, wow, I understand this about a consumer base, or this about potentially this segment, or maybe I'm moving kind of from macro segmentation more into micro segmentation, but I wish I could get even more granular. The challenge that we often see is not that you lack insight, it's that you have no path to act on it in a scalable way. And that disconnect between kind of that insight and the action, I think that's where there's a huge amount of potential for loyalty programs, but also a huge amount of change needed. Because today's consumer, they're engaging with products that are effectively personal products every single day. Whether it's Amazon or Netflix or Instagram, any one of those three, my interaction with Amazon or Netflix or Instagram is just for me. It makes sense to me. And your, Instagram page is going to look completely different than mine. And that's what consumers are getting used to. We're getting used to things being personal. And when you can't, again, connect the insights you have about a customer to how you treat them, kind of across not only your digital channels, but your physical ones as well, you're starting to create friction. And it's friction that consumers are going to increasingly choose not to have. That means if you can eliminate the friction, they're going to choose you. And if you can't, they're going to choose a competitor. And so that's where I think what we see is a lot of companies, they have established a loyalty program often as a first chance to just start to collect data, understand their customer base better. The next stage is kind of engaging, leveraging that data, and generally kind of this, again, macro segmentation kind of ways. The goal needs to be personal. It's all about addressing the individual's needs in the most effective way.
That's awesome. Well, I think traditionally what we've seen is brands have a challenge, listening to and understanding their customers, not hearing, but listening based on reciprocity, based on empathy, based on kind of a shared value exchange.
Mhm.
And I think that definitely is changing, and just hopefully will continue to change. But I think one of the things I like about what you guys do is simplicity that you enable for brands. There's so much jargon in the market right now around artificial intelligence, around neural networks, on machine learning, on next best action, personalization. Personalization, cadence management, segmentation was the number one challenge brands had in 2019. Going into 2020, they were going to work on, obviously,
Mhm.
before some of this. But I think it actually makes that even more important. And I think that brands that can doing it at scale, I think is right on, because you can have a relationship with 10, 20, 30 people, right? But when you start doing it at a scale, understanding what they have an interest in, using that zero-party data, it becomes hard to really do that at scale because systems aren't meant to do that. And some of the things you guys do in that regard is pretty compelling.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point, and maybe to tell, or give an example that will probably resonate for quite a few people. Often when we start working with a company, they're operating. If we think of these stages of stage one as kind of segmentation at a macro level, 5 to 10 segments, and stage two is more, let's say like 20 to 30 segments, and then stage three is 1-to-1. We often see people operating kind of in stage 1.5. They're starting to get more sophisticated, and the challenge they have is scaling. And what we often see is, and this was true working with I would say customers across all these different verticals. Segmentation is intensely manual, and what I mean by that isn't necessarily like there's let's say, developing the segment and determining what differentiates one from another. So let's say if you start with like a k-means clustering, you determine kind of which factors make the biggest differences. So you can say segment A versus segment B versus segment C. A lot of that is manual work. But then the next stage is where it really gets complex. And that's, well, what now do I want to provide or communicate to that segment to show them that I understand their need as a marketer, and that I have a product or a service that could help address that need, could help them achieve their goal, and developing that messaging, developing that strategy, developing then the experiment to test whether my hypothesis is right, to then analyze the results of that experiment and determine a winner and what I do next. That whole chain of events is manual. And if you have 5 segments, you have 5 different groups of people developing potentially all those different things. Or maybe it's one, but then you have your throughput problem. They can only do so much. If you move from 5, let's say, to 50, you're increasing the level of work by 10x. And if you go from 50 to 100, you're doubling it again. And you reach this point of dramatically increasing complexity without necessarily seeing that because of the cost, the ROI trade-off for your team.
Okay.
And as a point of comparison, when we start working with people, last year we sent over 2 billion individualized offers, across 50 million consumers in the US. And that level of scale, being able to operate at the individual person level, you can't get there through the challenges of today. As you said, like the systems just aren't built for it. And that's that, that's the thing about that insight to action gap, is you have to close it. You have to build a pipeline to take those insights and put them into action. And the pipeline, and kind of the way we think about it is, we've invested in a system to help automate that pipeline and be able to take those insights and operate at scale.
That's awesome. And I think the last question we have for you, you touched on a little bit throughout this, and I appreciate you doing that. But kind of holistically, how can formation, help brands improve their loyalty programs, improve the efficacy of their loyalty programs?
Yeah. So at the highest level, it's making it more personal. It's being able to address the individual needs of each of the people in your loyalty program at the various stages of the customer journey. And then more pragmatically, what we do is we allow you to individualize, let's say, offers or experiences. We allow those offers and experiences to improve over time automatically through the use of AI and machine learning. We synchronize those experiences across channels so that you can have the same kind of offers available wherever your customers are, which is, again, a really important part of how consumers want to engage with brands today. They want the experience to be relevant and have the same information across email and web and mobile and call center and all the other places, because otherwise it's disconnected. And then we dramatically increase the execution speed so that instead of having it take, and again, this is something that through all of our conversations with many different kind of CMOs and leaders across the Fortune 500 and loyalty, that segmentation problem and process is often anywhere between 3 and 5 months from the time a campaign is developed as an idea to when it goes into market and to when it's measured. That can be easily 16 or more weeks. We bring that down to less than 10 days. And what that means is dramatically increasing the throughput of your learning. So instead of only learning 4 times per year, now you're learning every week and you're adjusting every week. And you can make significant differences in actually a very lightweight way by kind of amplifying the decision-making power of a marketer. And the last thing we do is measure the impact. And I think this gets to, I think some points just raised. The kind of impact that being personal can really drive. It increases engagement, it increases completion, it increases your net incremental revenue from your loyalty efforts, and it dramatically increases marketing efficiency, meaning the amount of marketing dollars or loyalty currency that you're deploying can be far better applied and drive a much higher level of results.
That's awesome. Well, Christian, thank you very much for talking to us today. Very interesting what you guys are doing, and I think you are definitely addressing one of the biggest challenges that we are seeing around customer loyalty is doing personalization, doing it right, and most importantly, doing it at scale. That's a huge challenge we have, and helping brands listen to their customers in a kind of a deeper manner, which is great. Look forward to hearing more from you in 2020, and thanks for everything you do for the industry. It's deeply appreciated.
No, likewise, Mark. It was really a pleasure, and it's always great to work with you too. So look forward to doing more.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.